And then now streaming live on YouTube. Okay. And then we'll hit record. No feedback.
So far.
No. In 4 weeks, did Kelly figure out how to do this?
Fourth time's a charm.
Let's see. And what would Bridget tell us? Celebrate.
Yay.
So welcome back, Jessica. And I've lost track because this is our fourth or fifth time.
Fourth. This is week 4.
Week 4. And today we are going to talk about communicating our needs. And we've started chatting a little bit before, and I'm like, no, this is really good. Let's just jump on. So we're a little early, but that's okay.
That's okay. We were excited to get chatting.
We really were. So I thought it was really fascinating. The thing that just kind of, I was saying about it this morning when I was getting ready to come in. And you had exactly the same thought. Yes. I wrote it down and you said it, and I was like, no way, you did not just say that. So before we can communicate our needs, what do we need before we do that?
We need to know what it is that we want.
Yeah. Yeah. Why is that so hard for us?
Oh my goodness. I mean, I think that there's so many layers and so many factors to that. Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, I think it can stem from anything from being unsure of ourselves, being unsure of what we're capable of. We've chatted in previous weeks about like all of those limiting beliefs and the stories that we tell ourselves. And so in order to communicate our needs, number one, we have to be certain of what our needs are, which is really hard to it's hard to nail down. And then it's hard to also then communicate that, like put that out there to people and to the universe. And there's a lot of fear that comes up around that, a lot of self-doubt and
being vulnerable.
Yes. And the vulnerability, of course, is huge.
If I say to you, Jessica, I need you to be here with me now, I'm opening myself up to you having the power to reject me.
Of course. Yeah.
Or, disapprove. I mean, how often in our lives do we go and share a need, and maybe we're not clear, maybe we're not concise, maybe we're not perfect at it. It's misunderstood. And we're shamed for it. Then what do we do with that?
Well, I mean, many of us probably shut down, retreat. It would certainly cause us to think twice before communicating a need in the future.
Yeah.
Which is where we build a lot of our blocks stem from, those past experiences. Well, I tried this before and it didn't work out, or I tried to communicate with this person before and they rejected me. And then, that really snowballs from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And you said, connecting with our authentic self, and that just was like going back to the roles we talked about last week. We kind of are conditioned, and I don't think this is something that is unique to women. I think that men are as susceptible, and maybe even more so, to taking on these roles. I'm supposed to be a provider, I'm supposed to be strong, I'm supposed to be fill in the blank, whatever whatever roles have been put on them, and part of that process of discovering who we are authentically is peeling back those things that other people have put on us, and seeing, like Brene Brown talks about, being seen. And I think, didn't you write something this week about being seen?
Yes.
Yeah. Can you share that with us a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I posted on Instagram this week about, that same thing about, kind of that fear of being seen, and how, how perfectionism plays a role in that too. And that certainly applies here as well. But oftentimes, and this certainly applies to how we're communicating to people, but oftentimes we feel like we have to have this level of perfection, or it being the right time and the right place and all the stars align in order for us to do something, whatever it is. And I was sharing that experience on Instagram this week in relation to like my consistency and my communication and showing up on social media, and how it's like, sometimes it's like you're waiting for the perfect idea to write about, and the perfect picture to post, and the perfect quote, and all of that. And it's like, then you get so wrapped up in like needing all of these things to happen in order to actually do the action.
Right.
And I think, sometimes we forget that you don't gain confidence first and then do the action. You do the action a lot of times, and you build that confidence muscle over time. And I think that certainly can relate to, our chat today about communication. Even like you said, if you were to say something to me about needing me in the moment or whatever, and say that did go rejected in your eyes, being able to look at that is still building a muscle. Like, you still did what you felt like you needed to do. You still communicated what you felt like you needed to communicate. And, whether it was received or taken in the way that you wanted, maybe not, but you still did it. And that's like a step in building the muscle, right?
Yeah. But
I just threw a lot.
Yeah, you did. But you just said something that just went all over me. In my eyes.
Yes. And we talked a lot about this last week, right?
Right. What if the person I'm communicating with feels like in their mind they're showing up and being supportive? So here I am showing up for Jessica, and Jessica's going, wait a minute, Kelly, where are you? Why are you not supporting me? And there's this, missing of each other, kind of like, because I come to this, and you come to this through all those things that we've taken on over the years, and through the lenses of what you believe about yourself and what you believe about me. So all of that's going to play into the way that you're going to perceive my response.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And how you connect to, and as I've been doing a lot of trauma work and a lot of studying about trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that a very large percentage of women have suffered severe trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an interesting topic. I was talking to a friend the other day, and I said, I really believed up until recently that PTSD was what soldiers came home from war with. That was it. That was the PTSD box was limited to soldiers coming home from war. That was it.
Yeah.
And not realizing that there was a lot of people who suffered really severe trauma. A woman who has suffered any kind of trauma, sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, how is she going to go back to the beginning of this conversation, know what her needs are? How is she going to even know? Because what happens when we suffer trauma, where our needs are shamed, they're put down, they're diminished, they're not discounted. And so how does that woman who's suffered trauma able to, first of all, like we said, even know what she needs?
Right.
And second, get comfortable and feel strong enough to communicate that need with somebody and be vulnerable, because when you've suffered trauma, vulnerability is not your friend. It is, but you don't feel like it's your friend.
No.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think there's a lot of that, because that trauma work is all about discovering who you are authentically, and coming past the shame and past the lack of confidence, like to start. It's like training. It's like training for a race. Like you were just saying, you don't have the confidence and then go do it. You build it by doing the communication, by making yourself vulnerable, practicing, getting stronger at it.
Oh, for sure. And obviously in situation where, and we always recommend in a situation where there has been trauma involved, you are suffering from any form of PTSD or anything like that, certainly working through it with a licensed clinician to start is huge. But even that's that's a step in building that muscle, like starting there, even if you're not sure when and how you'll ever get to that point of being vulnerable, of being able to communicate your needs. Starting somewhere, and like we said in the beginning, celebrating all of those small steps along the way, because I think that really adds to that muscle growing as well, when you have the recognition and you practice gratitude and celebration and all of those things.
Yeah. I love that. I think gratitude is probably the most powerful, I don't know, I'm going to use the word life hack that we have.
It's true.
When we feel like something's going wrong, to just stop and change, like we learned in school about not judging.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're not getting an outcome that we like, we judging it is bad.
Mm-hmm.
And that judgment is going to make gratitude impossible.
Oh, for sure.
You can't have them both in the same space. We can't be grateful and judging at the same time.
Absolutely.
They just don't, the judgment will just destroy gratitude.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, have you ever tried to practice gratitude when you're in that space of like judgment, whether it's towards yourself or a situation or others, then you're feeling that negative energy?
Right.
Even sitting down to like, even if you have the awareness that that could sort of shift things,
Yeah,
like sitting down to actually do it is so difficult.
it is. Why do you think that is? Why is that difficult for us?
Sometimes I honestly think it's a level of like almost a level of self-sabotage in a way, like knowing that you could do this thing that would make you feel a lot better, but you're like totally resisting it. I feel that way sometimes, even with like daily routines. Like if I kind of get in a funk and fall off some of my daily routines, like it's like I know if I just stop today and like start that routine again, I'll feel so much better. But it's so hard to like break out of that sort of negative space and do those things again.
Is that why sticking to a diet or a healthy eating plan is difficult for us?
Of
Which is a
course.
form of communication. How we eat is communicating with our bodies
Oh, for sure.
and responding to communication from our body. So our body tells us, I'm hungry. Well, if I'm stressed and I just had a difficult conversation with someone or there's a lot going on, my body may not be hungry. It may just want comfort,
Yeah.
And cupcakes aren't nutritious, but they are comforting.
They are good while you're eating them.
Right. Yeah. And then, yeah. So, but I mean, that really kind of comes into that self-sabotage. So what do you think a woman who is struggling to discover her authenticity, to overcome shame or uncertainty, can do to stop that self-sabotage and to put herself on that track of training and building the confidence to communicate?
Well, I think that kind of circles right back to the beginning of our conversation where we were talking about discovering what it is that we actually want. Right? So we have to, I think we have to start there. Okay. And I think the only way that we're going to do that is to really spend some time turning inward. And I think that there's a lot of different ways that you can do that, which I think is great because, everyone likes certain ways of doing things. So there's definitely different ways out there, but we mentioned doing things like therapy. Obviously, we're coaches. We talk a lot about coaching. Some things that I do in my daily practice are meditation and yoga and really spending time connecting with ourselves
Right.
really turning inward and listening to what's going on inside, um and honoring what's going on inside.
Ooh. Ooh.
Sometimes we do have like these little wants and needs and desires that come up, but we're just kind of dismissing them, shoving them away. We don't even give them the time of day. So during that quiet reflection time, certainly just noticing what's coming up without judgment.
Without judgment.
Without
So
judgment.
he just said something, I think, very powerful, and I want to go back and call it out. Honoring what comes up for us.
Mm.
So if I come to you and share a need, and I'm wanting whatever it is from you, and you have a choice to hear it and choose to sit with me and meet that need, whatever it is. But we have that same choice within ourselves to, when I feel a need come up, to honor it or to ignore it. And how much depression and anger and frustration and physical illness comes from us not acknowledging and honoring our own needs.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I mean, to me, the purpose of being and living as your authentic self is to feel that sense of fulfillment, to feel joy, to feel peace, to feel balance. And when you are not living that way, you feel that internal conflict, stress, anxiety, a lot of different things, anger, frustration.
I need more sleep. My body's tired. My mind is tired. Fun fact, freebie for anybody who's suffered trauma, women, men too, who've suffered trauma, need more sleep. Healing and recovering from that is taxing. And when we sleep, our bodies and our minds recover. Our bodies go into a recovery cycle, and we need that. So anyway, I'm sorry.
No. Yeah. So I lost my train of thought there.
Sorry. You were talking about joy and balance and listening to yourself and being willing to, I think being kind to ourselves.
Of course.
If we start there, how much differently would we be able to show up?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's really at the essence of why it's so important to allow those thoughts, feelings, needs, desires to sort of come to the surface again without judgment. Is practicing kindness towards ourselves and how we're feeling and what we're thinking and what we're needing.
Right. Yeah. I was talking to a girlfriend yesterday who has just had a loss, and she just felt stuck, and she was just stuck. And a lot of us do feel really stuck after a loss. And she went outside in her yard and was doing some yoga just by herself, and just became overwhelmed with the emotion, and that mind body connection. When she started stretching her body, stretched her mind, and she was able to start processing that loss, and which I thought was just, and as she became aware of those feelings that were coming that had just been blocked, she was able to just kind of sit with them and process them, and listen, like you were talking about, just listening to our bodies and listening to what's coming up, and honoring that and respecting that.
Yeah. I think too, giving ourselves a way to turn inward and tap into those thoughts and feelings, whether it be through yoga or meditation or, whatever, also signals our body that we're open to receiving that information too. I think we spend a lot of time sort of shoving those feelings down and being closed off to them. But even that simple act of giving yourself that time, like your friend gave herself that time to do the yoga, was a signal to her mind, body, soul, that it's okay. I'm accepting and I'm allowing for these things to come to the surface, and it's okay. It's safe.
So when we have kind of peeled back some of those layers, and we're connecting to who we are authentically, then how do we choose who to communicate with?
I think that's a great question. And I think that with we talk about building sort of like that sense of confidence in ourselves as building a muscle. I think that in order for us to have sort of like some short-term wins that we can build upon, I think that it's important to start doing that with the people that you feel the safest doing so with. Whether that be a best friend or a family member or whoever, or maybe honestly, some people might feel more comfortable doing it with someone they don't even know.
Right.
Maybe that's easier for them to sort of not have that tie and connection. So I would certainly start off by picking some people that you feel comfortable doing so with, just to start to get that sense and that feeling inside of how it feels to do that, and start building that muscle.
Right. So an example, safe examples of that would be finding a good coach or a therapist, depending on kind of the severity of what you're dealing with. Not going online to, some dating site and finding somebody that says they're trustworthy. We don't want to go there. But what is the advantage of choosing someone to be vulnerable with that you don't have a history with?
I think because we talk a lot about, we talk a lot about like what other people think of us, and how other people perceive us. And of course, your history with each other comes into that, each other's history comes into that. And I think doing it with someone that there isn't sort of that connection to necessarily allows you to communicate your needs without those like underlying like understandings of each other or
Right.
old situations or perspectives of each other. It just physically allows you the opportunity to communicate those needs,
Right.
without really having kind of that tie and that history behind it.
How likely would it be that I'm going to use the term fresh set of eyes? We as coaches, hear something and we don't have all the emotions and all the memories associated with it. We don't have the stories that have been created around it. So how do you think that allows us to challenge the truth and to allow them to kind of go deeper into what they're believing about themselves?
I mean, I think being able to reflect back on the experience and what it is that you communicated with, and like you said, challenge that. Like, did I really communicate how I really feel or what I really need? Or so a good example of this is when I first started coaching, I would a lot of times, like if people would ask me about it or ask me what I was up to or ask me what I was doing, I was just kind of like, oh, like, yeah, I just kind of went through this coaching program and, and like just kind of put it aside or
Minimize it.
Oh, totally.
Making it small.
Yeah, totally. Minimizing it, making it small, making, not a big deal. Oftentimes I wouldn't even, I would focus so much on what they were doing and like hope the question didn't even come my way of like what I'm up to. Like totally, hard to talk about shifting careers and shifting careers and doing something new and doing something that
So
isn't widely known.
What were you afraid of? What were you afraid of? What was behind the playing small?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a lot of, there was certainly some self-doubt in being successful at coaching and successful at starting my own business. And there was certainly fear in leaving a career that that was, relatively safe and, safe for me, and to kind of step into this unknown. So being able to, and I remember one of those conversations in particular where I did kind of like play small and whatever. And I was able to, when I was talking to my sister, like later that week or a few days later or whatever, I was able to really reflect on that and really think about, why that was. And, I was feeling a little discouraged in myself for not really speaking my truth. And so being able to go back and reflect on did you communicate? Were you speaking your truth? Did you communicate in a way that you wanted to? If not, that's okay. It's a learning experience. How would you like to communicate in the future? Yeah, and I kind of made a point after that. I mean, with that topic specifically, anyways, to, not minimize things. And I brought up that situation of talking to people maybe that you don't have a history with, because that was kind of something that I did. And so just being able to, even out and about in the community, when you meet someone, being able to communicate what it is that you do. For me, it was talking about starting my coaching business and that process and what I do and who I work with and that sort of thing. But
so you started making yourself vulnerable.
Yeah.
How did it feel when you started that?
It felt really good because, like we were saying, like when you're speaking your truth and you're living your truth, like you feel that sense of joy and peace and alignment and
empowerment.
Yeah, of course. So it felt really good to start communicating in that way, for sure.
Yeah. When I think about that, I always kind of visualize a little baby horse has wobbly legs. You're not going to take a little baby horse that can barely walk and throw a saddle on it and go for a trail ride.
Right.
And that's kind of where we are when we're learning to communicate. But a lot of us are grown women in grown-up bodies, and we've been told we should know how to communicate, but we are still emotionally in learning how to communicate, learning how to identify our own needs for ourselves.
Yeah. It's definitely a tough process, but starting somewhere, starting anywhere, and sort of taking those baby steps, however small they are,
right,
really truly will begin to build that muscle slowly.
Yeah. So how are we doing on time? It's
good. We got another minute or so.
Okay. So I think I just kind of want to wrap this up and encourage anyone who's listening and feels like they have had struggles around discovering who they are authentically, or feels unsure of themselves, to feel free to reach out to either Jessica or I. We're here to support and serve.
Of course.
I've recently started as kind of an outpouring of my own work, which is where coaching usually takes us. Working with women who have suffered and are recovering from trauma survivors. And who are you trying to reach and talk to, Jessica?
It's so funny because you said we tend to come from a place that we've been, or that we're in right now. So I work with moms specifically, and again, it has a lot to do with our conversations we've been having about roles and hats we've been wearing, and hats we do wear on a daily basis. But really, that is what I help moms do, sort of strip away those roles and those hats and discover who they are authentically and start sort of living that way so that they can show up as their highest self in all of those roles while they're wearing all of those hats, and do so with a sense of fulfillment and peace and joy.
That's beautiful. Well, I am loving our time together. Thank you
Me
so
too.
much. I
You're so
appreciate
welcome.
you carving out 30 minutes on a Thursday morning.
Yes, I
So,
love it.
all right. Well, we're gonna say goodbye to our YouTube video, our YouTube audience. And